And Bradley, you wrote in the closer this weekend that Vision 2030 is now shifting from hype to pragmatism, which, of course, on the surface makes a lot of sense. What does this look like in practical terms moving forward?
I think what it means is that all of these projects that we've heard about, the sci-fi, Neom City, places like that, they're going to progress in very small stages. They're going to sort of test the waters, so to speak. I mean, Neom itself is such a good example. It's such a big project as it was described and announced. If they were to try to build all that at once, it would be unrealistic to draw in the kind of citizens that they want to bring to that place. So I think everything's going to progress in stages, small stages, and then obviously the ones that are going to really get the priority are the ones that are, you know, connected to a deadline. You know, they're going to be hosting the World Cup. They have to finish all the stadiums. They have other kind of objectives like that. Neom can't be canceled, but I think it can move ahead in a much smaller stage first. And in a way, this is something that's gone on throughout the Gulf. If you look in other cities or Emirates, there's a lot of things that were once announced as a $30 billion project, which maybe only progressed to a initial stage. Like a good example is in Abu Dhabi, the Masdar project. I remember when I was living there, it was originally going to be a huge zero carbon city, and now it's just essentially a university campus that embraced all of the ambition of the original idea, but they didn't proceed to build all that real estate that they didn't need to build.
Bradley, do you think this is also just a realization, perhaps even an admission, that the transition hasn't necessarily moved as fast as initially expected, and oil alone is not going to be able to fund these hugely expensive, hugely ambitious projects?
Yeah, I think probably Saudi Arabia hoped that there would be a greater influx of investment. That hasn't come. It hasn't really. There hasn't been an influx of investment from other countries, from other corporations, and the price of oil alone, it has to be well above $100 to support a lot of the ambition of these plans. So I think they're having to be realistic. They're having to have a more of a revenue-based model for what they're trying to build, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Though I also argued in that piece that by being more realistic, it actually makes probably a signal to investors that there may be some opportunities here, because this isn't just a place that's building anything without any kind of understanding that it will work. They're not just building it because they're building it. They're building it because it has a model behind it. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing to see what comes next, if we'll see a little bit more investment because of this kind of signal to the market.
Indeed, a big question of whether or not this recalibration actually makes Saudi Arabia more investable for foreigners. Indeed, something that the government has been trying to do is really crowd in private capital, de-risk those investments to ensure that more of these projects can be privately funded. But Bradley, to another point here, what is MBS's actual political calculation here? Because, of course, admitting that there has been concerns about the viability of these projects would be a political risk for him, but also scaling back the funding does make him look more like a pragmatic and practical leader as well. So what is the political calculus for MBS? You wrote the book on the Crown Prince. What's your take?
I don't think that he's risking a lot, politically speaking. I mean, he's not going to be voted out of office anytime soon. Of course, he has to be very sensitive to how he comes across to his domestic audience, because that's where he derives his mandate, especially the younger population that is so big in Saudi Arabia. I think that young people in Saudi Arabia are feeling like they're in the middle of a huge transformation. So they're not feeling like this is kind of dialing back. This is more the real estate component to this. And no matter what, even building a small percentage of these projects involves hiring a lot more Saudi people to work in those companies and those construction projects and whatever comes afterwards. So I think, in a way, he has to be careful not to come across as someone who's failing or having difficulties, but he at the same time he does want to signal that he's a rational person. He's not just the classic Arab leader who's building no matter what happens, and their ego is behind it. And I think that would actually be a worse signal to the local population because that might become a familiar archetype in the region.